So good afternoon, everybody. Warm welcome to all of you here today, this afternoon, joining HEAL's webinar on solutions and good practices for healthy urban mobility. And it's wonderful to see so many of you interested in this topic. My name is Anne Stauffer. I'm Deputy Director at the Health and Environment Alliance HEAL, an association of over 90 member organizations from the health community working for better health through a healthier environment. And I'm joined here this afternoon by a HEAL Polish team, Ronika Michalbak, Joanna Brzezinska, Jacek Karachun, and also Elke Zander, HEAL's Head of Communications. Today is the third webinar in our series on transport, air pollution, and health. We've already considered the data on the extent of the pollution problem from transport and its health effects. We've looked into how car travel in cities and an infrastructure focused on cars contributes to the rise in chronic disease and possibly also linked to mental health. Today, we now want to turn to solutions and good practices for healthy urban mobility. As indeed, solutions exist and many cities across Europe have started to implement them. This includes Brussels, the city where HEAL's Secretariat is based, which has turned its main inner city road into a pedestrian zone. Paris, which has established a 30-kilometer speed limit and the concept of a 15-minute city, or Vienna, where the use of public transport costs only €1 a day, or Tallinn, where public transport is free. But change not only takes place in Europe's capitals, it's actually decision makers in many cities are furthering sustainable and healthy mobility, also as part of COVID-19 recovery efforts. And we will hear more about this in our webinar today. At HEAL, we have emphasized active transportation, that is walking and cycling, as a triple win for health, the climate, and clean air. And this call has actually recently been echoed by the World Health Organization in their special report to the upcoming climate conference, COP26, which includes as one of the 10 recommendations to reimagine urban environments, transport and mobility, and giving a priority for walking, cycling, and public transport, as well as creating people-centered cities and phasing out internal combustion engine and the reduction and reduce private car use. So today, we'll hear from our distinguished speakers on how exactly local authorities have achieved or are working to achieve the switch from a polluting to a healthy urban mobility. And I'm especially pleased that this afternoon we will be having an East-West dialogue with our speakers from Poland and from Spain, and hopefully with many contributions from our participants gathered here. And with that, I would like to introduce and welcome our first speaker, Urszula Stefanowicz. She's from the Polish Climate Coalition. And Ursula is a project manager working on climate projects, which includes transport and energy emission reduction. Since 2008, she coordinates advocacy activities at the Polish Ecological Club Mazovian branch within the Climate Coalition. And the Climate Coalition is a coalition of 27 organizations dedicated to protecting the climate. She's an observer of international negotiations and has taken part in 8 UN FCCC COP conferences already. And Ursula, you'll speak to us this afternoon about active mobility in towns, good practices. Thank you very much for being here, and the floor is yours. We can't hear you yet.
Ula, musisz się wyciszyć, odciszyć znaczy.
Urszula, you need to unmute your microphone so that we can hear you.
I think I have a problem with sharing the presentation, although it worked a moment ago.
Now it works on my computer.
You see the presentation?
We can see it, yes. And you just have to click
Yes.
on presentation mode. But if that doesn't work, that's also fine this way. Yes,
Like
we can
now?
see it. Yes.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Great. So you can see it?
We can see it. You can start, please. The floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Now będę mówić po polsku.
I'll be speaking Polish. I hope this is not a problem. Let me start by saying that in Poland, our mobility has been developing in the wrong direction over the last 30-year period. There have been a huge urban sprawl that we have witnessed. We divided rather than combined the city. We built roads and infrastructure because a car was perceived to be a symbol of advancement, new freedom, positive changes. Therefore, a vehicle was given a priority when we developed infrastructure, organized space zoning. This was to the detriment of pedestrians. We deprived them of the space of the city. We also neglected public transport. We lost particular connections. We have wasted public transport space. Now, this is the time to delve into the city's planning scheme, how we implement in-city mobility. We need to realize that this is not a car transport that is the basis. This is walking. It brings together different means of transport in the city tissue.
Can you still see the presentation?
We can see it, but somehow it is switched back to not presentation mode, but it's fine. Just please continue.
Sorry.
It's fine.
Sorry. Sorry. Now, that is better, right?
Yes, now it's presentation mode again.
Okay. Now, teraz poza elementami zrównoważonej
In addition to sustainable mobility elements, which we find important to implement.
Sorry. Maybe I'll stay that way. Because poza rozwojem transportu
In
publicznego.
addition to public transport development and bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, we need to create a friendly public space with diversified building development and their functions. We need to put this space into an active mode. This means that we cannot have a housing district that is separated from the office district and separated from a commercial one. One district must be the one that has got shops, leisure activities, area close at hand. It would be the best to be able to work in this district too. During the pandemic's time, we used to telework from our own homes. Therefore, our perception of space has changed when it comes to this space around the corner. Therefore, we have also started perceiving other needs apart from possessing a car. We used a car less often. This was related to lower transport needs. On the other hand, people decided to abandon public transport. So we return to the basics of mobility, namely walking, public transport, active transport, cycling transport, and all other personal carriers has got a common denominator, namely pedestrian traffic. And this should be the priority. Therefore, the areas dedicated for pedestrians that are attractive and safe are the basis. So what kind of activities can cities engage in when we speak about mobility change and its development towards sustainability. We can replace cars to have low or no emission ones, therefore they become less odious. But this does not solve all the problems, because such vehicles will still occupy the space. They will be pollutants to a lesser extent, but still. Therefore, cars should be removed from this mobility. So active mobility, transport, is the other side of the coin. Therefore, we can have a smaller share of cars in this mix. Therefore, we need to apply the tools to serve the purpose in a simultaneous way. And the last step, lowering the needs related to the transport. This stems from spatial planning and zoning of the cities, so that it is easier for us to reach our destinations we use on day-to-day basis, like shops, bakeries, libraries, daycare centers. If they are close at hand, it means that less often we travel by car. These might be different character activities. They can be of economic, infrastructure, planning, regulatory nature. These can be innovative solution into transport organization, not necessarily exquisitely innovative, but the ones that change transport organization. You just close down a section of a road, and in well-selected places, we close street sections. This triggers traffic organization change throughout the city if well planned. Transport services, logistic changes, and information education focused activities. There are many other overlapping and simultaneous activities we should involve in to get desired results. There are many positive activities in the cities, but these are the ones that are cherry-picked by the city authorities because they may find specific area of activity pretty appealing to them, whilst other elements are not realized at all or implemented in a non-effective way. Therefore, they do not deliver the expected results. Economic tools, congestion payments, public transport payments, they can be lower. However, I wouldn't recommend this solution, though Polish cities use this kind of instrument. I do apologize for my cough.
Na przykład darmowe.
For example, free tickets for children and the youth. Such tickets have gained popularity, but this is not better compared to public transport quality enhancement. The latter is more important. Parking fees changes, green public tenders are the economic solutions. These public tenders may include bicycles or e-bikes that support active mobility. Regulatory measures. We can limit access. We can limit car access in specific zones. And here is a bunch of examples, like low emission zones in Europe and ultra low emission zones. London serves as a perfect example here. This is an ultra LEZ. In Poland, we were supposed to have clean transport areas, but still our regulatory framework is not effective. Regardless what we can do in the cities, cities still need to have this national framework or European regulatory framework, which makes it easier to operate at different levels. It is worth remembering limitation of car fleet that cannot enter a specific area at specific times. So we've got so-called school street, calming down or limitation of pass-through traffic, parking policy. These are regulatory measures. And infrastructural ones on top of that. These have already been mentioned. I do apologize for my voice, but I've been pestered by an illness, by a cold. Rail transport development, which becomes the backbone for in-city transport services. Many Polish cities have been developing the tram transport. Traffic management systems, including the smart ones, are also there. These electronic services may regulate traffic flows in which buses or public transport get the priority. When well taken care of and well designed, it makes and facilitates transport. And better conditions for cycling and walking. It's not all about cycling paths. Sometimes cities have very good intentions. They create new cycling routes with every transport investment they have, but they build them in sections, sometimes at the cost of greenery or pedestrian areas. In most cases in Poland, roads are pretty wide, wider than required by regulations. So this road space can be transferred to bicycle traffic, but it's still not enough. Bicycle lanes should be coherent, should be safe to use, to move about the whole city. And on top of that, they need to be safe in this sense that we feel self-secured when traveling, not too twisted, not too crisscrossed, not conflicting with other ones. So there should be the least possible conflict with pedestrians. These should be separated from car traffic. Even a narrow strip of greenery or street furniture like pots create a sense of security compared to the lane that is just drawn or marked on the asphalt, and you've got cars driving on one side and cars parked on the other side. It won't be to our liking. We won't let a kid go this kind of lane. So the quality of infrastructure is very important.
We also do see such innovations as car sharing, mobility as a service, which helps in the transport and in combining public transport with active mobility. We have different city bike systems that help combine different forms and means of transport from various operators. The better and the more coordination we have, and the easier the access to collective communication, collective information to plan using such means of transport from the point of view of the inhabitants, the better. There is public transport on demand available. We even do have such examples in Poland. Let me just skip the logistic aspects because it's more about organizing the transport of goods. And there is also the aspect of collaboration with inhabitants. Simply the officers from the authorities, from different public institutions should show that they use means of public transport instead of company cars. They can use city bikes or other means of transport and consultations.
You have
And
2 more minutes, Ursula. Thank you.
Mamy wiele przykładów i ze
we have a
świata,
number of examples from Poland and worldwide of comprehensive solutions that I would like to pay your attention to. My favorite example is of Ghent, the Belgian city that was divided into zones and limited the possibilities to travel from one zone to another. In order to travel by car from one zone to another, you have to go to a ring road. However, if you use public transport or active mobility solutions, the communication, the transport is really facilitated. Furthermore, there are low emission zones with some plans to make some solutions more stringent. Children are released from fees for public transport. Many areas were transformed into greeneries, but it was all possible owing to a deep dialogue with the inhabitants. There are so-called living streets and workshops during which you can learn how to design streets. There are other cities which follow this example. For instance, Birmingham in the UK, they clearly say and openly say that Ghent is their showcase to follow. Their ambitious plan assumes the same or similar division of the city. And there is also a plan to reallocate the city space. Furthermore, it is accompanied by bike infrastructure. Another comprehensive example goes from Hidalgo, the mayor of Paris, implemented the objective of a 15-minute city. Other cities follow this example. During the pandemic, she created new bicycle lanes only by painting them on the roads. It was a transient solution. However, nowadays there are more ambitious plans and successive 180 kilometers are planned by 2026. Furthermore, there are what we call school streets, where the speed limit is higher. In the majority of streets in Paris, it's 30 kilometers per hour. There is also going to be a ban on transit as of 2022. So numerous solutions implemented simultaneously. Moreover, such solutions are feasible in Poland. Although we have a mixture of different positive and negative activities, but there is a huge need for better systematizing and comprehensive holistic approach, creating mobility plans and coordinating as well as exchanging good practices. But there are many examples to be proud of. There are interesting examples from Wojna. I know I should be closing my presentation. Let me give you an example of a climate quarter in Krakow. It's based on a 15-minute city concept where the car traffic is supposed to be limited in the city center, and it's meant to create the space which is friendly for pedestrians and for bicycle riders. We also have similar activities in Wrocław, a continued program of school streets. Furthermore, there is the so-called pedestrian officer in the city, and there is a plan to improve public transport as well as to eliminate bicycle gaps and the development of railway. Warsaw has had the first school street as of September 2021 and is reconstructing some streets in the city center. The cities, or all cities, have to face a lot of challenges. There is no perfect city. There is no perfect city in Poland in this respect. However, there are loads of good practices that cannot be presented during such a short presentation. These are the examples worth following. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ursula, for this presentation and for showing us both the framework on that is needed for healthy urban mobility, but also the many examples. Indeed, there are so many good examples, and I think it's so important to keep sharing and to keep talking about them to show that it is indeed possible to, as I said before, change from polluting city infrastructure to one that is sustainable and health promoting. And I hope that in this webinar we will exchange a lot about this. And thank you also as you were fighting a cold and still being with us today. We do appreciate that. Thank you very much. For our participants, I wanted to say, if you have any comments or questions, please have a look at the bottom of your screen and use the Q&A for anything you would like to share with us. Any questions, any thoughts that you have on what you're hearing this afternoon. And now I would like to turn to our next presenter, Dr. Tadeusz Jaycek. Welcome. He is the director of the health department at the Pomeranian Marshal Office and an academic teacher at the Medical University of Gdansk in northern Poland. Tadeusz is a graduate of the Medical University of Gdansk and a public health specialist. In the past, you've had many hats and many roles. You've been the president of the Public Health Council of the municipality of the city of Gdansk, the medical director of the University Clinical Center in the city, and the president of the National Health Fund. And I heard that today is also your name day, so congratulations on that. And Tadeusz Jedrzejczyk will now speak to us about the health benefits of active mobility and with examples from Gdansk. Tadeusz, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo. Zgodnie z ustaleniami będę
Thank you
mówił.
very much. According to our arrangements, I'll be speaking Polish, and I hope the interpretation is available. I would like to thank all HEAL leaders for inviting me and for the opportunity to share my opinions. I am one of those members of public authorities who drive a bicycle, which is an absolute minimum if you want to become a good example to follow. So where are we? We are in a situation that we have to admit it. Individual transport, individual vehicles dominate. We still know that in some countries, and Norway being the leader, there is a trend to change to electric vehicles, but we know that this is not always the solution we would like to see in our cities. But another example, comparison between Berlin and Warsaw, we exceeded the number of cars driven in Berlin, but there is still a lot to do. However, as for the very fact of owning them, how often people really use these vehicles? Why does it happen, and why there is such strong resistance? We must not forget that politicians create changes, better and good, but if there is no public support for the changes, nothing will happen and nothing will change. Furthermore, it is always more difficult to change something than to stick to the old and proven solutions. Therefore, there are some stereotypes that I'd like to share with you that are still there and that we have to overcome. We have to challenge them. Only then will it be possible to exceed the critical mass for change. We often say that we get stuck in traffic jams, but still it's time for ourselves, time to listen to the radio, that it's not wasting time. We still know, based on research, that those people who drive individually often get stressed while driving, which reduces our life expectancy. Furthermore, there is a very strong need to compare with others. I need to have a car because others do. We feel this social pressure to follow what others do. If all my colleagues, workmates drive a car, I follow the same example. I need to have a better car, look at me vehicle, a glossy, flashy car, and it is determined by different conditions. It has been inscribed by previous generations. So we observe strong resistance in this respect. So the question is how to introduce these changes. We have strong arguments related to health, to public health. It's not only physical, but also mental health. We all know that physical and mental health, as was determined in the 1970s, it's the link. There is a link between diet and environment, and they determine our health condition in three quarters. Biology and healthcare constitute minor part. We all know that these components are intertwined. We develop our environment and create our lifestyle, and they exert mutual pressure. Therefore, we must not resign on any of these aspects if we want to implement the transformation. Summing up, Hill carried out a lot of projects showing the low air quality, and I want to say that in Poland we have the following challenge. It's a dominant conviction that the dominant air pollution comes from heating, but we know that it matters what we inhale. So flue gases from vehicles are definitely an equivalent source of pollution from this point of view. First and foremost, they last for the whole year, and also the emission is close to our respiratory tract, even closer than emissions from heating. Another component which is often forgotten is noise. This is the component which we often reverberate when talking about the crisis of mental health. Noise, apart from generating the pollution that affects our mental condition, can be among the factors, detrimental factors. It includes the noise generated by moving vehicles. Each of them generates noise at around 70, 80 decibels. It is also worth remembering that there can be a direct physical hazard. We have many victims of accidents, 3,000 victims every year, and 10,000 people with disabilities. A lot can be achieved by emphasizing this aspect. It will be more difficult to convince people to improve air quality. However, the vision of the safety of children who go to school can be a really convincing argument. It's easier to convince people to implement some changes, but there is still a lot to do. The good aspect is that after some years of break, the parliament is about to implement the new law that will reduce the mandate burden, but it's not enough. Last but not least, there is an argument which is very important from the point of view of public health. Being used to your vehicle can be detrimental for your physical activity. It contributes a lot, and we know that now there is about a year and a half to improve. This value was determined based on the research carried out also by our activity. It showed that the most physically active country, Austria, the life expectancy there is longer than in Poland because people are so physically active. It is a great challenge for such countries as Poland and those that are not so physically active. We must not forget this aspect of competition, which I said, the competition of wasting or saving time. You can drive to a fitness club by your car, but it's only a minor percentage of using your vehicle. I mentioned the influence on the mental health. We are trying to carry out various surveys and research on stress related to individual driving. There were some results published long time ago which revealed that it increases social alienation, and the sense of loneliness can deteriorate our physical and mental health. This is like a social killer, which is among the top worst factors. Furthermore, driving may cause dehumanization. If we have the barrier formed by the windscreen, by windows, glass, and metal, means that we often forget the human factor on the road.
Lekko pod włos tutaj pozwoliłem sobie użyć, także naprawdę.
I know that it's like putting a fly in the ointment, but we often hear different arguments. It's like I get a sense of freedom, I save time. However, these are the arguments that we have to win with by providing a more attractive narration. My time. We can show that an average Pole spends more time earning the money for their car than they spend the time using the vehicle. And with a blink of an eye, we can say that we spend a lot of time discussing traffic jams, bypasses, car parks, and terrible bicycle riders. So that's the question, what you spend the time you saved on. It's a bit like undermining the current lifestyle. We know that if you're addicted to something, it's really difficult to get over it, but it's never too late to start. So it's good to try to change. A good method to get away from addiction is not trying to escape the reality. When I talk to foreign students, that in Poland, we always refer to history, that if there is no reference to history in the lecture, it's a wasted time and the lecture is wrong. So I would like to refer to history a bit and show you where we are and where we can be if we take advantage of all technological solutions.
There is a set of big players who have developed
More minutes,
economy-wise.
please.
I know
Thank
it, I'm disciplined, I'm about to finish. 20th of the previous century, so around 100 years ago. But let's skim it quickly. Little have we done. We eliminated lead, but we started adding on ethanol for no obvious reason. What we are in for, the beginning of the electric cars and autonomous cars domination. And I want to make my contribution here because this autonomy will be the dominant factor in the next decade. What we want to use now is to dedicate it to the people who really need it, people with disabilities, elderly, who are supposed to come to the daycare center or walk-in clinic. And I won't reverberate it because it has already been said nicely by a previous speaker. But I'll tell you what's ahead of us. We need to support public transport, but we need to exert pressure for it to be faster, more independent, more useful. Inhabitants have been convinced to see every element of the space lost for vehicle transport must be compensated. And 2 words about what we are in the midst of in Gdansk. There is an app with 4.4 thousand users being involved and 11 employers. You can use it to talk, to promote this kind of transport. It's really impressive because this is 1 promille of all inhabitants using this app for surveying, training, teaching, dissemination. Electric scooters. I am for bicycles and scooters to be available on the public basis because they provide for better space utilization. And there is an autonomous line that goes to the local zoo. But we should start with the elderly people and people with disabilities who should be using this. I was able to squeeze into the time allowed for my presentation. I'm open for discussions and questions.
Thank you very much, Tadeusz, and I'm sure we will have questions and discussions at the end on what you presented. I liked very much when you spoke about the mindset and the culture. People love their cars. I mean, that's not specific to Poland. That's definitely something you see across Europe, and this is something we really have to consider when we're looking into how can we change our urban mobility infrastructure. And also thank you for sharing the tangible examples. As I said, that's always so good to know. So now we would like to turn to our final speaker, last but not least, and I think hear from you especially on how did you achieve that change in your city. We're very pleased to welcome with us this afternoon Annabelle Julas Torreira. She's from the city of Ponteverda in Spain, which has come to be known as the pedestrian paradise. That's how it was titled in an article from The Guardian. Annabelle is the government spokesperson and councillor for the city Ponteverda promotion. She has a degree in political science and administration with a master's degree in local and regional development and PhD courses in contemporary political processes. She has experience in senior management in both public companies and private companies. And Annabelle will now explain to us why Ponteverda is a pedestrian paradise and how this came to be and what we can learn from it. Thank you very much for being here. And the floor is yours, Annabelle.
Bueno, pues antes de nada, dar as gracias pola invitación. Para nós é unha honra poder falar de Pontevedra en Polonia e a verdade é que estamos moi agradecidos. Vou a tratar de compartir a miña pantalla.
For us, it's such an honor to speak about Pontevedra here in this event. I'm going to try to share my screen. If you give me 1 second. Yeah, just 1 second, if you don't mind. Okay, I'm gonna make a really quick change here. Okay, so I hope I didn't deduct this from my presentation time. So as you were saying, I mean, you discussed about this, my colleagues before me, and it is true that we have a big problem in the cities. We have this problem for different reasons. We try from different instances and from different point of views to analyze these problems and try to find a common solution. Sometimes we get lost when we analyze the difference between big and little cities, towns and cities. But in my humble opinion, I believe that we do not find really the key thing that links us, all of us, whether you are a town, whether you are a city or a big city, to have a common reality. The common reality is that we live in cities, and so we need to take care of the air we breathe every day. So my colleague said it's not a matter of, it's not only a physical question, it's also a social and psychic question. So what we wanted to offer a solution from politics, from the area I work in. And I stress this idea because I couldn't do it. I defend, I advocate for the necessity to do politics, to work in politics. So we have the political organizations, and I'm so happy to work in one of them, but also, you know, advocacy, the social movement, they also advocate, and people, they can also advocate, whether they are politicians or not. So based on these political needs to find answers, we analyzed three basic questions. We wanted that the cities are ruled by cars or by people. How important it is the public space for us. And in my presentation, I'm going to stress this all and on about the importance to have public spaces. So in Pontevedra, we believe that public space, it is a right, as any other right you can have as a citizen, as a human being. So this right has to be understood for everybody, whether they're political, their personal condition, and so on. And the third question it is, who has the tools to make this change plausible? So in Spain and the different municipalities, we have competences to rearrange our territory. So our vision was to recover this space for the people, and we did it in this way at the very beginning. So we open up assemblies where everybody could participate, and we wanted people to express their ideas, to position themselves, to also to understand the changes we were proposing. But do not misunderstand this, because it doesn't mean that everybody agreed on every single action we took. In many cases, we take some political decisions and we don't have the support from people. And in this case, this lack of support, you cannot use it as an excuse not to act, not to make it go forward. Because if we said that we were going to build a city for people, we need to try to do this. So Pontevedra started everything back in 1999 when we were there were very few discussions about these questions. It was a very gray city, very insecure. I always give the example because my mother, she didn't allow me to play in the old town because of, you know, drug problems and about the space that was insecure, and we had a very high volume of people using their cars, their private cars. In this, we had two roads that were filled with cars. So Pontevedra is a really compact city, very small. We are lucky that we have this advantage. It's not a large city. So we started, the starting point was that we had nowadays 84,000 inhabitants in a metropolitan area of 250,000. But as I said, the population density was very high. In one square kilometer, we had 24,000 inhabitants. We learned from different sources because we were lucky to have many different references. So Francisco Tonucci, Jambel, and many people that were already writing, that were defining where the basic problems in the cities. So having all this foundation, this theoretical foundation, we try to adapt these ideas to our cities. This is very important. We should not copy any given solution. We should look for adaptation depending on your needs. So we learn a very basic lesson, and this is when we try to fix the problems in the city, there is this lesson that we should never forget. So the traffic cannot be arranged somehow. If we want to enhance the quality of life of our citizens and the quality of life in cities, we need to understand that everything has to do with a radical position against traffic. So we have so many jams in the entries of cities, and they add more lanes and more lanes underground, over the road, and in the end they will eventually get collapsed. So what we try to do in Pontevedra is to remove the traffic, to remove the jams. And if we had a magic recipe, everybody would share this recipe, but there is not. So the solution in Pontevedra was reverse the priorities, the mobility priorities in our cities, which involves that the urban design and everything that we do in the city needed to be focused in people, not focused on private vehicles. So for us, in a small city like ours, the solution it is to walk. So in big cities, it would be walking, but also the public transportation. So here you can see this picture back in 1999 when we removed, these are the main roads in 1999, and now you can see what are the roads we have open in 2019 nowadays. And even nowadays, more recently, we have suppressed some of these roads. So we have removed some traffic that we are not interested in. So we have removed the passage traffic, as we call it, the traffic of people that traverse the city, but they were not really staying in the city. So we have big ring roads around Pontevedra, and of course we also set up roadblocks in some points. We also wanted to remove the traffic of agitation. So people, looking for a public space in order to park, but we have limited space. So, people keep on drive around the city looking for the space. So we just kept the destination traffic. In many cases, people say that Pontevedra is the city without cars, and this is not true. In Pontevedra, you can use your car to go anywhere, but it has to be justified. You need to have some final destination. So you can traverse the city. I mean, this person that is seeking for, I don't know, to pick up some very big box from a shop, or maybe this person that needs to use the car in order to pick up children, or maybe take somebody to the hospital and so on. So anybody can drive around the city in case you have some trade to do around the city, but only for those, and only for a limited period of time. We also find a solution for the parking space. So we had lots of private parking spaces underground in the city center, and the prices are not really high, around €1 for 1 hour. So many people can afford it. But for those people that do not want to pay for this private parking, we also have some public open spaces in the outskirts of the city. So the idea is you can park your car and then you can walk. And lastly, we have also created the service parking spaces. Everybody can get to any part of the city, but they can only park in those spaces for 15 minutes. If not, they get a fine, and this is very effective. So we wanted to build this city for everyone. So we need to make it inclusive, and not only for people with reduced mobility, but people with any other kind of disability, visual, hearing, or any functional And this is thinking about the city from different points of view. We need to create this sensation of security around the city. So we are the first city in Europe that restricted the speed to 30 kilometers per hour. And now most of the roads and many other streets, they are limited to 20 and 10 kilometers per hour. But this is not only necessary, we also needed to include some other elements that restrains people from speeding up in the city. So we have these bumps around the city, so they are kind of a barrier that stimulate cars to slow down. They also have these effects for people. So it is a space for people. And when the car needs to cross through there, they also slow down and they realize this is for people. I also wanted to get further about the feminist inclusion perspective of these spaces, because we need to feel secure in our cities. We need not to be afraid of walking around in the city. We need to think about the present, not about the past. So we need to think about the present of children, boys and girls in the city, that they need to be autonomous around the cities in order to grow up and have better spaces to live in. What are the results? Well, in the last years, we have enhanced the cycling and the walking traffic, but we need to take into account that even if bicycles are so important, people is always in the center of everything. And we treat bicycles in the same way we treat cars. We also need to occupy the public space. And this means that if we take out the cars and we do nothing in the squares and around the cities, the cars will come back again. So we are promoting lots of activities on the streets, in the squares, more than 1,000 activities every year. So we have reduced traffic in 97% in the old town, also in the 77% in the outer ring. And in Pontevedra, we didn't remove cars, but we have demonstrated something, that in reality, there are less cars necessary than what we thought in order for the city to keep on operating. So back in 1999, we had 80,000 cars entering the city, and we have reduced this in a great volume. So we are talking about one of the results that makes us more proud, is that from starting in 2011, in those roads, depending on the town hall of Pontevedra, nobody has died in those roads, and we are so happy with this result. We also have been able to reduce the CO2 emissions in 67%. So in Pontevedra, we breathe practically pure air. With regards to the parameters of the WHO, we also have reduced the acoustic contamination and the luminic contamination. We have an more inhabitants in 33%.
In my country, we have an old population, and we have the youngest population in the whole Galicia. When we started these actions, we didn't imagine what was going to happen. We had many awards, the Intermodes 2015, or another award in New York, another by the European Commission for road security, but we never thought that we were going to be speaking in Beijing, Mexico, France, Paris. So you can imagine all this promotion, what it means for us. But we have been governing with different governments since 1999. So our neighbors still rely on us. So all these effects have an economic impact. The people that come to visit us, the tourism, but the international promotion for our city. We could never be able to pay such a campaign, such as the publication by the Guardian, as you mentioned earlier, or the French TV, the Financial Times, and other many prestigious publications. It depends on us. Everything depends on us. As someone mentioned it earlier, we can keep theorizing on these problems, and we can change. We have difficulties because obviously we have difficulties, but we need to take action. We believe that we should take action to have reformulated spaces, such as the ones you can see in the pictures. We always say one thing. Most likely, many people of you are thinking that, okay, this is probably she's exaggerating, but no, you can come to Ponteverda to live it. We are proud of living in Ponteverda, but we are also proud of sharing what we did. We believe that local changes drive to the global change. And as other speakers have mentioned, we can change, we can make a better society, and that's what we have to do. Again, I want to insist on, sorry, this video that we use sometimes. Again, I wanted to thank you for being invited here, and I am available for all your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Annabelle, for this presentation. Amazing. It's like a checklist, I guess, for how that change that we have been talking about can happen. And yeah, very impressive to see what you have achieved with what you described. And we now have time for questions and discussions. And I already saw some comments in the chat, and I'll come to that in a minute. But I want to start with you, Annabelle, actually, as we were talking a lot about, the car culture and people's love of cars, and I think the obstacles we were up against. You mentioned that you involved the residents in the beginning, and that the most important was for you to have the trust of people. So could you tell us a bit more how you achieved that people went with that? Because clearly, cutting down the parking spaces is not a very popular measure in a lot of places. And many of the changes that you described surely have met some resistance. So how did you have specific campaigns for people? Did you, for example, highlight the health benefits that people would get? Thank you.
Yes. Well, in fact, sometimes we get lost ourselves in the difficulties because the easiest answers are many times the solutions. All of us should start from, our starting point should be that people want to live in better cities. This is obvious, as the public authorities don't have the right to choose. Once we start from this perspective, we start to take action. And when people see by themselves what we are achieving, not having a city full of works, we need to take decisions. Assuming those decisions, I have a clear project. And if you explain people what you are going to do, you do not lie to them. People trust you, because at the end of the day, when you go to Ponteverda and you walk through the different neighborhoods, you find that it is a very nice walk. I can still go to the city center, go shopping. The shops are still open. We didn't have the apocalypses. At the end of the day, I feel better. And this is the way of creating nice neighborhoods. And and we keep working on that. And my experience is telling me that the more we work, the more time we work, the more demanding the people from Pontevedra are. And this is something that is related to what I mentioned earlier about you cannot get total consensus. You have to explain your ideas, and you will get some people that do not agree with those ideas. You have to explain those ideas, talk about the advantages and the disadvantages. And once you have enough support, you take the action. Maybe you will find two people or maybe two whole associations, but that they do not represent the whole population. Now, maybe those two associations are going to say, okay, that is wrong, this is bad, but still you have some support, you have enough support, and you have to carry on with what you believe. You have some people that are supporting you. You believe those people are enough. You have to take the decisions you think that they are right, and you have to execute it. You cannot wait. You have to make the change possible.
Thank you very much. I would now like to bring in Tadeusz and Ursula on that and ask you with what you presented. Yes, can you give us examples of educational campaigns, information, bringing in the residents of Gdansk, and tied to that, I've seen there was the question on which specific measures do you recommend that are taken regarding healthy urban mobility in the city? Yeah, Tadeusz, do you want to go first?
Jasne. Rzeczywiście takie
Yes, of
działania
course. Such activities have been carried out, but there is also some work going on. Recently, the city established a climate change forum where we were asked to participate in it in order to translate it somehow into the language of healthcare. So we had to mention the argument which is related to mobile app that enables joining and identifying with the project. 1 promille is not a tremendous result, but you could win socks. So I know it was not much rewarding, but it was about extending the bicycle season for winter months. And in spring, we have go to school, ride your bike to school, or ride your scooter to school. Schools are engaged in these campaigns, and parents are discouraged from driving their kids to school. It's also about securing safety. Warsaw is implementing a similar initiative in some of its districts. However, Gdansk at the very beginning focused on building many bicycle lanes. A certain standstill was observed, but not. After some time, we managed to convince people to move to Mevo. This is the city bike sharing system, which has not been very popular. However, we do hope that a lot more will be done towards encouraging people to travel around the city this way. There are some campaigns promoting public transport. However, there is a tremendous challenge related to it. It means we need to build tram lines that connect new districts. It's still far from perfect, but we have a metropolitan challenge related to metropolitan railway. At the beginning, it was people were quite reluctant, because they emphasized it's an obsolete solution. However, now it turns out many people choose this means of transport. The next step in the next European funding perspective is about intermodality, and we want to encourage more people to commute to some transfer nodes and commute to other cities or towns. That's it from me.
Thank you. Ursula, would you like to add?
Mogę coś dodać.
Yes, I can add a comment. Generally, I don't live in Gdansk, but in Warsaw or the suburbs of Warsaw, so I don't know Gdansk so well. So I'm not going to repeat what Mr. Jedrzejczyk said. However, I would like to say that the advantage of Gdansk is that it has a sustainable mobility plan. It means a comprehensive plan of implementing measures in this respect. It also has dedicated officers in the active mobility department and a representative for bike transport. This is an advantage of big cities. They have greater opportunities than small towns and villages because they can employ specialists who can, on a regular basis, strive towards improvement of the situation in the city related to mobility. Moreover, as far as metropolitan transport is concerned, I do agree it's pivotal. The fact that we introduce metropolitan tickets is also a good idea, and perfect integration of the transport, to the best of my knowledge, has not happened. But I suppose it's the ailment of most Polish cities. As for information campaigns, I would like to add that the most popular action in Gdańsk is the Cycling May. It was organized for schools for the 7th time, and there were around 30,000 participants from different schools. So it's a large-scale project, and it's a large scale of teaching proper mobility behavior. I do appreciate that Gdansk 2 or 3 years ago had a project of an audit. It was a pedestrian and bicycle traffic safety audit. It was carried out on a significant area of the city. Based on the audit results, some corrective measures have been implemented. So these are the good aspects, good practices, although still some problems remain. We still lack the integration and the priority for pedestrians in these programs. That's my opinion.
Thank you. I see, Tadeusz, you want to come back in, please.
Just one sentence, because tak, jednak po polsku będzie bezpieczniej.
Okay, I'll speak Polish. It's going to be more convenient for me. I would like to add that we have a kind of competition between Gdańsk and Gdynia. Gdynia is a younger city with not so long-lasting history, but it's a positive competition to show our best sides. At the beginning of the 1990s, Gdynia was focused on public transport a lot. It's one of the 2 cities where we have trolley buses, so electric buses. But now Gdynia has taken steps to limit the number of parking spaces. To the best of my knowledge, it is now doing better than Gdańsk. So I would like to express my respect and appreciation for Gdynia.
Thank you. That's always good to hear, to have a race to the top and race to be better. Wonderful. So next question, or different question that also came up in the chat, but also within our team here as we were preparing this webinar. And this is about what about the people with special needs? What about the people who are disabled, those who can't walk very long distances? How do you recognize their needs in moving towards more sustainable and healthy urban mobility? And yeah, how do you make your city as inclusive as possible? And I wanted to see if Annabelle, you could respond there first, as you also mentioned this in your presentation, but if you could provide us with a bit more details on how exactly you ensured this inclusivity and really having a people-centered city.
Sí, cuando se fala de...
Yes, so when we talk about quality of life, we need to think that quality of life has to include all people, all persons, whether they independently of their social, psychic, or economic conditions. So we need to take in consideration these people with some sort of disabling functional problem, also in the sensitive way. So we need to design it in taking into account all this. So if we work on a single platform street where all types of traffic are integrated, we may have problems with people having this visual disability because maybe they can cross a car or have some sort of problem. So on the ground, you need to have some sort of reference, visual reference, or different lines in order for them to feel secure in their space. So it is so important also that the different urban furniture has to be hanging in the air and integrated in the public space. So we need to work this public space from all different perspectives. And I always try to talk about this public space because this is the real transformative item. So I would not say that is transformative if we replace the motor vehicles by electric vehicles. No, because they will still have occupy the public spaces. So we will still face these integration problems, these inclusion problems. So from politics, we need to rethink about accessibility from all different points of view, not only about social policy. It's not only a matter of social policy, but we needed to think about this in an holistic way. We need to have social politics that are very inclusive. So in the different squares, in the streets, we feel all comfortable. So this is a question about common sense and technical capability, and we need to think about the different points of view. We have a disagreement with this association of people with mobility issues that they also test or different proposals or initiatives. So we need to let them participate and we need to act.
Thank you very much. And I can actually share a good example on that. It's that was one that was for the rural communities, but I thought that was a really good one from Germany. Is that they set up specific places where elderly people who had who couldn't walk that long anymore, they could sit, and then if you were driving by and you see the person and it was designated, this person wants to go to the supermarket, if he or she is sitting there, this person needs to go to the pharmacy and other places. So it's basically kind of if you want, enabling a system of getting a ride to where you need to go. And I think this is one of the, I thought, really positive examples. Plus you're actually bringing together people who normally would not interact. But yeah, Ursula, Tadeusz, what are your thoughts on how to recognize special needs of some people and how to bring that together as in an inclusive way? Ursula, you want to go first, please?
Dziękuję za to pytanie. Ja myślę,
Thank you
że
very much for this question. I think that we should have a broad scope perspective, owing to the fact that European society and citizens are getting older and older. This will impede our moving abilities. Will be elderly people with poorer coordination, hard on hearing and seeing, we will suffer from fatigue. So therefore, the space needs to be designed in order to be friendly for elderly people. So single platform city without any curbs and additional steps and stairs and hurdles, passages difficult to use with a wheelchair, and people who have impeded mobility should be avoided. The same applies to people who have weaker body coordination. Brighter and more apparent colors should be used at a zebra crossing, contrastive colors. It's worth creating places which are conflict-free rest zones. So if you move about, you can sit down if you suffer from lower mobility. I like this example when you indicated the possibility to give people a ride, but a moment of rest on a bench surrounded by greenery is also a good idea, because enhanced with these elements, the city space is more friendly. This includes people with disabilities, and we need to remember about them when designing areas. Green packed areas with benches should include places for wheelchair users so that they can stop by and rest. When marking spaces, we need to remember about this so that people can also find such places. This is a comprehensive end-to-end solution if they are to respond to all city users' needs. Thank you. And I understand it is my turn now. Yes, we have reached the first level. We have elderly and people with disabilities friendly public transport, so they can make use of these vehicles. 20 years ago, rarely did we have such friendly transport vehicles, but we need to advance. What I wanted to say is use it in transformation. Let's have some parking spaces for the elderly. Let's keep them to improve their access. One of the participants has reminded me that it is not only the zoo that enjoys this electric car access, but also the communal cemetery, which is no car zone. So it was difficult to provide services for elderly people who go to the cemetery. It is nice. It is an ecological place and now equipped with vehicles for elderly. Sometimes this is young people who are fully fit that use cars rather than elderly people. So there is a kind of competition for the city space. So the city can show that specific solutions are exceptions targeted at specific groups of people, and those who enjoy greater mobility may boost their health using pedestrian routes, for example. If I may add to that, I don't think that parking cars for elderly would be helpful. I think Gdansk is a good solution. Ghent was a good example that I quoted. In the city center, there is active mobility zone only. There is a minibus that you can call. They provide services upon request for those hard on walking, tired, suffering from fatigue, unable to move. They carry them to the places they want to go to. This upon request service with no itinerary or timetable is the answer to the needs of the people who may not be fit enough to drive a car in a responsible and a safe way, but they still need to be transported. Autonomous mobility might be a part of the solution, but we don't have to wait for that, because a little bus like that may serve the purpose. It is important to have it. It is important to have it free of charge for elderly people and people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all your insights. And one thing I can say, I can definitely relate to the problem of too high pavements, Ursula, that you were talking about from the perspective of a mother. And when you were there with your pushchair and your baby, or even with small children, I think there is a lot that still needs to be done to make, cities really more comfortable and safe, and including families as well. And actually, there are some good projects there as well in terms of asking people in a community about their ways of walking and what should be improved, and so really getting the perspective from those who are out there the whole time. We are reaching actually the end of our webinar, of our exchange. So I wanted to ask you for a very short answer, actually, and that is, if you had one wish, if there was a fairy and you had one wish of what it would take to get to healthier urban mobility, especially considering in the current situation where with the pandemic we've seen both positive developments. We've seen a lot more people cycling. We've had many cities who have actually established temporary cycle lanes who are now turned into permanent ones, but we've also seen more people switching back to their private car use for safety reasons. So with that background, if there was the one thing that needed to happen to get to make us for more health promoting cities, what would that be? And why don't we start with Tadeusz?
I hope I'd get a moment of time to think, because there's lots of things. Yes, I think that start as fast as possible. Have an assessment system that starts as early as the school, where we inform about activities for whole family. They can learn about it. They can develop it themselves. They can do it on their own in a sustainable and lasting way. So I would speak about this basic education at school.
Thank you very much. Ursula, yes, what are your thoughts?
My opinion
is as follows. I would choose in-depth spatial planning change, city organization change, to put pedestrians at the top of the ranking list. This would make cities more compact with mixed functions, because this would trigger other changes. But we need to have spatial planning as the basis. The pedestrian has got the priority. Other things will be streamlined alongside.
Thank you very much. And Annabelle, we've heard that Ponteverda is already the pedestrian paradise. So even in paradise, what can be made better still?
So in my case, along with my colleagues, the wishes from my colleagues, I will ask for a collective thinking, a collective support, because every individual action has a global result. So we need to leave aside the individualisms and try to look for a result altogether.
Thank you very much. That's a wonderful closing word. I would like to thank all our speakers here this evening, Urszula, Tadeusz, and Annabelle. Thank you so much for sharing and really providing us with a learning experience this evening. I would like to thank our participants for being there. I would like to thank our wonderful translators. We had a premiere here tonight with having translation into 3 languages, and it all worked out really well. So thank you very much. And last but not least, I would like to thank the HEAL team for getting us there, supporting us with the content, with the logistics, with everything you're doing behind the scenes. Thank you very much, Joanna, Jacek, Veronica, and Elke. And I would close by saying that definitely this, the question of healthy urban mobility is still continuing to be one of importance for us as HEAL. So stay tuned. Please continue to check in with us. We will certainly organize more webinars in the future. We will provide more materials, and we would love to continue the exchange with you so that we end up living all in surroundings that protect us and promote our health and bring us together as a community. Thank you very much and have a good evening.